Hey everyone, and happy holidays. I'm going to be starting a little series of going through the Advent of Code for December 2023. I actually haven't done this before in terms of previous years, and I'm excited to kind of try and do this every day for the next 25 days, I guess. So what this is, it's kind of like a challenge. There's 2 challenges every day. You earn stars by doing it. They're puzzles that you can use any coding language to solve. And I'm going to be using Dart. It is the first day just finished yesterday, and I have a solve for this one. And based on kind of looking up stuff about this, I didn't see too many people doing things in Dart. There's a lot of, C, there was a lot of Python for sure. There was a lot of people using Rust and Go. But at least on the Reddit at the time of my last checking, I did not see anyone using Dart. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to, do some videos on, how we can solve these problems in Dart and learn some things along the way. So I definitely recommend, to join this challenge and try and do it on your own in whatever language you want. And of course, you can come and watch these videos hopefully every day and see at least the solution I came up with. And by no means is the solution I come up with the only solution. There's probably a million different ways to do these things, even within Dart. But it might help, walking you through my thought process on these things, and I think it could be a lot of fun. So I'm not going to read this out loud because it's would take a long time and be probably pretty boring. You can read on your own, but the gist of this first challenge has to do with elves coming up with calibration values. So for example, there's these strings and they have a mix of numbers and letters in them. And the challenge is to find the first digit and the last digit somewhere in the string, single digit. And then you actually concatenate them together. So for the first example, there's a 1 and a 2, so the value would be 12 for that one. And then this one has a 3 first, and then an 8 at the very end, or the last one is an 8, so 3 and 8, 38. So we're not adding those, we're just kind of concatenating the strings and then, parsing it as an integer, I suppose. And then ultimately, the final value that you have to input in is the sum of all those values. So let's kind of walk through how we're doing this. And the cool thing is they give you this example, which in building these, I've kind of saved the example one, and I work with this as kind of like just a testing ground, because I'll know if it adds up to 142 when I run my script. There's a good chance I did it correctly. But you get your own, although I'm not sure if it's unique. If for each person, it may be the same for everyone. I'm not even entirely sure. But you're given a document that's much larger, because obviously this is a programming challenge. And if they were telling you, like, here's 4 things, come up with the answer, you could probably just figure out in your head, okay, what's 12 plus 38 plus 15? The actual data that you get is 1,000 lines long. So doing this manually would be very hard. So let's kind of figure out how to do this. So first things first, I made a main.dart file. It is async because I want to read lines from a file. So I've created also just some utility functions, and these will be things that probably I'll reuse throughout multiple days. So for instance, I just have one right now that just reads lines from a file, and you just pass in a file path, it reads the lines and returns them. So you're basically just getting a list of strings back. And there's a catch that will throw you an error. Maybe you typed in the name of the file wrong, and it will return nothing. So it still conforms to the contract of this, but it doesn't. It will throw an error, so you'll know something's up. And then what I've kind of done is I sort of have a const value use ground truth, and just based on that value, it'll either load in the ground truth version of this, which is this data right here, or if I have it set to false, we'll actually use the proper one. So I have it set to true right now so that we can test this out. And basically just running this, if I just go Dart and run December1a.dart, I'll see my final answer spit it out here, which does conform to what they say the answer is here, which is great. So how are we doing this then? This is pretty basic. So we're reading the lines from the files, we're getting that list back, and I'm passing into this function called solve, which is basically the custom function that does most of the arithmetic here. So we get a list of values in, and then I'm just going to be tracking those as we loop through all of them, basically keeping a list of integers. So those will essentially be these right here, 12, 38, 15, 77. And we loop through the values, and basically I have this function that's going to get us the first and last digits. So if we skip to that now, and this is using records, which is cool. We're actually returning two different things from this. It's a fairly new thing in Dart. You could of course do this just by returning an array, but I really like this is a perfect time to use records when we want to get two distinct things back. So all we really do here is we're just doing a very basic regular expression. It's just basically finding digits, /d will find digits. And we're looking for all the matches. And we just want to make sure that there's at least one match. Because if there's not one match, we know something went wrong. So I actually, just so that we don't have to deal with really like error handling in a sense that this could be null coming back, I'm just throwing an exception here. So if something was passed in a string, that didn't, have anything in it, we know something's wrong. Maybe we passed in the wrong file, something like that. But we're just going to throw an exception, and that will essentially exit the program. But then all we do is we parse, because these will still be strings, even though they're digits. We want to parse that and return the first match as well as the last match. So we'll get back the first and last value. And then we're just going to sum that add this into this list. So now we have a list of things. It's going to keep looping through. And then I'm just doing a really fancy way of summing values in a list. We can essentially use the fold function, and this will repeat on each entry in the list, starting with our initial value of 0, because we want our sum to start at 0. And all we're doing is we're adding whatever has been added so far in this fold to the most recent one. Another way we could have easily done this is just by having something like int sum equals 0, and then rather than adding it to the array, we could just be going sum plus equals, this concatenation function here. Which I realize I didn't even talk about yet, but the concatenation function is very simple. It basically takes A and B, puts them in as a string, so 1 and 7, and then it parses it, so you get an integer back. So again, we run this, and we will see 142, and if we change this to this here, we'll get the correct answer back, and this is what we would paste into the website, and it will tell us it's wrong or it's right. For this one, I'm pretty sure I just got it right on the first go because it was pretty simple, but we're gonna get into the second one in a minute, and I definitely had a little more trouble with that and learn that you can't, although you can submit multiple tries, they don't let you submit right away. You can't just keep doing it. It gives you, I think, like a 5-minute timeout, so you have to be pretty confident with your answer. Okay, so that's the first challenge right there. Now for the second challenge, this gets a little more complicated, and my first attempt at it was kind of embarrassing because I was just having so much trouble, because I was kind of trying to reuse a lot of the things I already made, and just essentially it created problems. And funny enough, I actually, using the ground truth, I was getting the correct answer, but I realized there was a small little thing that in the real data would act a little bit differently. So let's talk about part 2. So the difference in part 2 is they realize, there's actually things like the word 8 written out in here, and 3 written out in here, and 2, and those need to be treated as digits as well. But I think what makes this extra complicated is the fact that if you look at 8, 2, 3, and I'll just really bring this here and zoom it for a minute, there's kind of a complication happening here, right? We have 8, and we have 2, and we have 3. And technically, if you just pulled the 8 out, the 2 would no longer really exist, and same with this. And in this case, it's not really a problem because we only care about the first and the last, and it would be fine. But there are cases in at least my data that I had to use that would create problems, and that's where I had some trouble. So my solution for this one, everything else is the same. Basically, we just want to still get those values back, just basically replacing these with numbers and still adding them and getting a final thing. That's still the same challenge. It's just essentially replacing these. So what I've done here, same sort of thing. I have, reading the lines from files, and although it's the same input file, if I'm, not using the ground truth, there's a slightly different ground truth for the part 2. They give you some different examples here. So that's what I was kind of using. And if we actually just run this real quick, just to make sure our program works, we get the 281 back, which is what they say it is. So we know the logic here is good, and I know only because I've submitted it that it is good from the other point of view too. But so yeah, my first attempt at this was kind of like, I'm just going to tweak, my this one right here, and kind of like, I think what I did is I would in this I would update this, or in this, sorry, right in here, I would basically do like kind of like a string replace and stuff on it, and then turn them into digits. But it was creating a lot of weird issues, especially when there was those sort of like overlaps. And Dart, from what I understand, doesn't seem to have a good thing with regular expressions to actually find overlapping values. So I did this in a sort of a different way that I think works really well, because again, all we really care about is the first and last. We don't have to necessarily replace every instance of our text in there. So if we look at our ground truth again, in this case, there's a 2, a 1, and a 9. We don't really even care about this one. All we care about is searching from here to here till we find something, and searching from the end to the beginning till we find something. And that's same with this one here. So, if we're just searching 8 and then we're searching backwards kind of for 3, it doesn't really matter that there's overlap in 2. We can ignore that. Once we found something, we know we're good. Everything in the middle is irrelevant. So this is kind of how I solved this one. So same kind of thing, we go into our solve function. And in this case, I am, rather than doing that fold, I'm just doing it the kind of more lazy way of just starting with a sum of 0, and we'll just be appending that in. So we loop through all the values, and the first digit is pretty basic. Essentially, I have this word to number mapping. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, obviously going to these. Still going to strings, because that's totally fine for what we're doing. Although thinking about it now, I probably could have actually saved a step by making these integers, but neither here nor there. So first digit here, we essentially are doing a regular expression, and what this regular expression actually looks like is essentially, and I'll just draw it out because it's just kind of doing it in a quicker way. It's essentially like taking all of these and just putting a pipe character between them. So we're just taking the keys of all this and joining them with this pipe character. So it ends up being this whole thing. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 written out, and then also 1, 2, 3, and so on and forth. So that's our regular expression, and what we're doing is, this is pretty basic. We're just finding the match, the first match, and if there isn't any matches, meaning this comes back as null, we want to just kind of throw an exception because we've done something wrong here. This should, based on the data, we should be getting something back. So that we just return the matches, because this is first match, it'll only be one match. We just return the group of it, the first group, and that will essentially return a string of, one of these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it might be, 7, 8, 9, written out like that. So that's pretty basic. We basically get that. Okay, we have the first value. Now, the last digit's a little more complicated, but I think done in a pretty simple way. So what I decided to do is I'm just going to reverse this string. So the input value, I'm calling this function I made called reverse string, which is a very basic function. It basically just takes the value, splits up into all the characters, does a reverse, and then rejoins it back together. So if I put ABC into here, I would get CBA back. So we first reverse that value, and then we're doing, we're kind of like editing our regex. So we're taking each key and actually reversing it. So now this would be something like ONE TWO. Like that's basically what this would look like. And then it would still have all the numbers, because you reversing a 1 or 2, becomes still a 1. So it's basically looking like this, same kind of thing. And now it's the same process. We're just looking for a first match, but we've not just reversed the value, but we've also reversed the keys we're looking for. And it's similarly, we want to throw an exception if it doesn't find a match, and we can look into why something went wrong. And then at the very end, we want to reverse the string back. So we're actually putting it back to, what it should be. So now it's, instead of CBA, it's ABC again, coming back as we want. So we get these two values, and then we just want to make sure our word mappings, these right here, have those values. And if not, we'll throw an exception on that. And then all we do is we increment the sum. We essentially are just going to concatenate those two values, so the word mapping first and the word mapping last. So we'll get back, if it was 7, 8, we would get 7 and 8 next to each other. And of course, if we just parse that as an int and then add it to our sum, we'll get our sum back. So let's try running this one. We already ran it on the ground truth. We're getting back 281, which is what this says. And if we turn this off to actually use our real data, we'll get quite a larger number because there's a lot more input. But we get this number back, and I paste that in, and it tells me like everything's good, you win. So yeah, that's the first challenge. I am going to have this up on my GitHub, and I'll be committing to it throughout the month, or at least the next 25 days as this thing goes. I'll try and keep a pretty, basic file structure here where we have, it seems like there's going to be 2 challenges a day. So I'll name it, December 1st A, December 1st B, and soon you'll see December 2nd A, and so on and so forth. But I definitely, want to reiterate, like, please, this is these are pretty well thought out challenges that really get you thinking about programming. Please, like, if you have the time, try and take a pass on your own, or even just like think how you might do it before, maybe coming to watch the next video in the series. I don't want to just make this be a place to, cheat and get all the answers, because, it's not like this competition is you're going to win anything for doing it. It's really just a learning process. So definitely try it on your own. And also in the comments, if, you have some other solutions that are, totally different or slightly different, I'd love links to them, or just, your thought process and stuff. And we can have a really fun month together. All right. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.